So I've covered the armature in clay using a technique that builds it up right from the very core design, which I call the dynamic curves, through to the two basic structures that are the core of all movement. So that the way that I'm structuring this and the way that it comes together builds a map for me to be able to create symmetry, but also life and vitality within the sculpture itself. So the dynamic curves, I've just drawn them in on this side so you can see them. So the dynamic curve follows the line of the chest, comes through the pelvis into the hip, and then defines the back of the thigh just here. The dynamic curve here comes down, defines the curvature of the back of the rib cage here into the front of the thigh just here. I've got my armature marked out so I know exactly where the armature is inside the body itself. You never follow the armature as though it's some sort of skeleton. That's just not how it works. The armature needs to be kept well out of the way, so bones that you represent within a sculpture are always done as a sculpture, so they're always done in clay. You never want the armature to be anywhere near the outside of the clay work itself. So using a chart like this, you can define exactly where your armature is and exactly where you want to be. Now, one of the most important measurements is from the armature itself to what's called the jugular notch, which is this little place just here between the two clavicles, the top of the sternum and the sternocleidomastoid muscle that comes down into that area. It's just here on the human body itself. Now that's a key measuring feature, because your armature is always going to be right because it's been made according to the chart here, so you know that your armature is deadly accurate. From that we can then determine exactly where the jugular notch is, because it will always be in the same place in relationship to the armature. It hasn't got room to move or stretch. It's also defined by the sternum just here. So the sternum is the height of a head on a perfect proportion. So we measure that measurement in, and it can't change. It's fixed because it's three bones bonded together, the manubrium, the gladius, and the xiphoid process just here. So that measurement will always be fixed no matter how much the body moves. And this is where you get a real advantage, because what you're doing is creating movement. That movement is created between the fixed three bones of your pelvis and the fixed three bones of the sternum here and the shape of the rib cage. Slightly less so with the shape of the rib cage, because obviously as you breathe in it changes and moves slightly. But as far as we're concerned from a sculptural point of view, the rib cage is fixed and the pelvis is fixed. And if you do that, then twisting motion, any movement of the arms and so on is not coming from the movement of the arm, it's coming from this basic design, this relationship between the pelvis and the rib cage just here. So that's what I've done here, I've created that. Now another head height is here from the perineum to the tummy button, which will be approximately there. I say approximately because the tummy button will move. It's not a fixed landmark feature on the body itself, because as this woman is stretching backwards, this distance from here to the perineum is changing, is getting longer, so it'll be longer than it appears to be on the chart here. And this is where the difficulty arises, because you can pretty well predict what's going to happen with the knee and how those bones move, because those bones are fixed bones. They have a structure to them that is like that. So they cannot get longer and shorter as they move. Their movement is very predictable. That's not the case with the torso. So as the torso moves, it moves unfortunately a little bit like a snake, so that it is stretching at the front and compressing at the back, or stretching at the back and compressing at the front. So where the tummy button is will be, you can guess pretty much where it is, but it will definitely move. So bearing all those things in mind, which is a bit mind-boggling when I'm talking to you like this, but it is something that you can study with us at the Sculpture School. It is also something that you can get as part of an anatomy talk, which again you can buy through the Sculpture School itself. And we've also got a video showing you the basics of how you create the human body. That would be the human body in an anatomical position, standing upright and straight. That's how you learn to measure. From that, the more complex measurements of movement come into play. It's not much movement involved in this, but it's difficult to do, because if you get it wrong, and it's easy to get it wrong, the torso will be too long for the legs, and the whole thing will start to lose its balance. And it's done by what I call a series of tricks of the trade. So once you start to really know what you're doing, you're in control all the time, and that control keeps you happy and fulfilled as you're sculpting. It really makes a massive difference. It's challenging, so it's taken me since the last video about an hour and a half to get to this stage. I've worked in sequence, so I always look at the profiles first. So this measurement here from the front to the back of the thigh, the front to the back of the knee, that's all worked out. That measurement from the buttock to the knee is also a key measurement when you're doing something like this, because again it's fixed. That's where the hip is, just there. That's the hip marker here. This is the pelvic point marker just here. But this is gluteus maximus that's coming out behind, and it's going to be compressed because of the position she's in. She's seated. So this is a very brief resume of where I'm at and what I'm doing. If you do want more information, do look us up on the Sculpture School website, and everything that you need to know will be there for you. I'm going to carry on now, and when I get to another appropriate point, I'll stop and just explain what's happening.